Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Rent Prep for Landlords. This is episode 215. On this podcast episode, you got just me, Eric. Steve is out of the office as of recording this, out for a little vacay. Good for him. It needs it. You know, it's busy. You got summertime. You got a lot going on. It's good to unwind, relax a little bit. But I do have a guest on the podcast today, and I'm actually pulling this guest's audio from an interview that we did. We did a Facebook Live interview with Nick Loper of Side Hustle Nation. You can see that on our Facebook page if you haven't already seen that. And I really like what Nick has going on. He has a website, Side Hustle Nation, and it's all about people who have side hustles going on. He interviews them and kind of tries to pull out little insights and wisdom from his guests. And I thought it would be a great guest for our podcast because a lot of the people who listen to our podcast and a lot of the people who run their background checks through Rent Prep are doing side hustles. They have rental properties on the side. They use it as a way to support their family with extra income, or maybe they have the vision of someday being able to leave their full-time job because of this side hustle they have going on in real estate. So Nick's going to talk about 5 of his favorite guests and their specific side hustles that they started. And some of them have turned into full-time jobs, and others still kind of have as a side hustle just to make a little bit more income for themselves. And I think you guys will really like this interview right after this.
Welcome to the Rent Prep for Landlords podcast. And now your hosts, Stephen White and Eric Worrell.
Hey, everybody. How you doing? You got Eric Worrell here with rentprep.com. And we got a new face here. We're doing an interview with Nick Loper of Side Hustle Nation. How you doing, Nick?
I'm doing great, Eric. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. I feel like this will be pretty easy for our viewers because we have a very similar look, the shaved head and there's a little facial hair. So
they're going to be like, wait, who's talking again? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You know what? I'll throw our names up on screen so they know who's talking. So, Nick, I came across your website and your podcast, and you had a lot of really interesting content. And basically, I mean, the name, it says it all already, right? Side Hustle Nation. And I reached out because I thought that you'd have some really interesting insights for our audience of landlords and property managers, because a lot of them are doing real estate as a side hustle. But you interview all sorts of people from all sorts of walks of life talking about their side hustles. So I was wondering if you could kind of tell us about how you got started with this journey. And I don't know if it started with the podcast or the website, and then what it's evolved into, and just tell us a little bit about your project.
Yeah, absolutely. So, of course, real estate is one of the oldest side hustles in the book. There's the side hustle Shih Tzu right now. My PR director, or whatever title I give him. So my original side hustle, and I've been helped by real estate, and I've been burned pretty bad by real estate. So not super involved with direct ownership right now or direct investment right now. But as far as what got me started in the entrepreneurial world, actually was a lease option property that I owned back 10 or 12 years ago. Kind of luckily got out just before the crash. But really the business that got me started online was a footwear comparison shopping site. It would aggregate the catalogs from Zappos and Amazon and all these other stores, and would collect a commission or a finder's fee for anybody who ended up buying shoes through the site. And, that business had a good run. Eventually became a full-time focus for me. And then while I was running that, started half a dozen other side projects, most of which kind of died a quiet death in some corner of the internet. But a couple of those have stuck around and actually outlived the shoe business. And one of those is the Side Hustle Nation blog and podcast.
Yeah, and I mean, you have a really big following. I mean, what is your typical podcast? I mean, how many listeners are you getting, if you don't mind letting us know?
Maybe 20,000 people a week.
Yeah. So you get a lot of people tuning in, and I've listened to several episodes. And the thing that's great about it is that every episode has so much different content. And we're going to be discussing 5 different episodes that you kind of picked out that you thought some of our listeners might like. And I'll kind of do a quick recap of those. We're going to be talking about digital real estate investing, which might not be what you think when you hear the title. Flea market flipping, bounce house rentals, parking lot cleanups, and turning what should be trash into treasure, but I wrote turning trash with CH, so I misspelled that. I apologize. But so we're going to kind of break each one of these down. And why don't we start? You know what? I want to leave digital real estate investing for the last one. So why don't we start with parking lot cleanup? So this was episode number 266 of your podcast. I got it up on the screen here. If anybody wants to check it out, they can check out the Facebook video. If you're not watching this live, we got all the links for everything below in the comments. So parking lot cleanup guy, what do you remember from this podcast? What did you learn from him?
This was a pretty inspiring story. So this guy's actually been he's been running his parking lot cleanup business since like the early 80s. Started as a side hustle. I forget he was like working in sporting goods or something, like working retail.
You were sporting goods, yep.
And early mornings, late at night, he's like, this is the perfect side hustle because you can't do it when the cars are in the parking lot, right? But I can go in before work and, just walk these lots. And he's like, anybody who can walk can do this business, right? And he's got like a little video of him like sweeping stuff into a little sweeper container, like the kind you see at Disneyland and stuff.
Yeah, the butler, right? Isn't that what it's called?
I don't know. I was really impressed with this because it's like, oh, this is a no-brainer thing. And he got his first customers just by like, asking I think it was either, I don't remember if it was the core tenant in kind of like the little shopping center or if it was like the property management company that was in charge of it. But they said, well, actually, we've been having a hard time finding a reliable service to do that. So yeah, absolutely. Why don't you do it for a week, and if we like you, we'll keep you, kind of a thing. And so he was like, shoot, this is the easiest gig ever, So he just kind of like, walks the lot as like an estimate for how long it's going to take him, and then kind of named his price. And over the last 30 something years, he's built this into a $600,000 a year operation. He's based in Calgary, so I don't know how wide he's like expanded geographically, but now has other contractors to go do the quote dirty work for doing the lot cleanup. I was like, man, this is something that almost anybody could do. And he made the pitch, of course, that it's the perfect side hustle because it's got to be done kind of in off hours.
Yeah. And one of the things I thought was interesting about his story is that he first started by approaching property managers. Like he had a bunch of property management clients that were paying him, and he said it worked out to about $30 to $50 an hour. And I wonder, too, if there's somebody listening to this who maybe is a property manager, but they can talk to their brother and be like, why don't you pitch us on cleaning up the lots or something, So it's definitely very applicable to our audience, too, the fact that he got this start. And the thing that I liked about it, too, is that he was working this job. And like you said, it was a side hustle. And then within a few months realized, you know what, I'm making more money on this side hustle than my full-time job. So let's just make the switch.
Yeah, I can just do this a few hours, early morning, and I kind of have the rest of the day ahead of me. I was inspired by that one because it was like super simple. Almost everybody's going to have like a shopping center or several in their town that might have a need for this. And, he went into some details on like, well, how would you go about getting clients and, what's your pitch like and how to price it. And it was an interesting one. Just one of those like, oh, business ideas are everywhere kind of a thing.
Yeah. The simplest business idea, right? America's simplest business, I think he called it.
Yeah.
All right. The episode number 274, moving along, is turning trash into treasure. And this was actually the first one that I discovered of yours. And I was just like enthralled by it because I'm just like reading up on this guy who made, I think it was over $1,100 before your podcast at 11 o'clock in the morning, flipping some pallets, right?
Yeah, we recorded probably around noon his time. And he was like, well, let me give you an example. I picked up this stuff over here. I was like, oh man, that sounds like a pretty good day. I'm obsessed with these like types of businesses. These are like the junk hauling services. I met a company, it's called Eco Scraps, where they're basically getting, scrap food or even sometimes getting paid to take it away and then packaging or reselling that stuff. So it's like, if you can get your inventory for free, like that's a fantastic business. Even people kind of trolling the free sections on Craigslist. Like the last time we moved, we had a company, or I guess just a guy, but it's kind of like towards the evening and he pulls up in this box van and it's like loaded to the brim with stuff. And he picked up this dresser from us for free because we just wanted to be rid of it. That has to be he has to be like flipping this stuff. Otherwise, like, what are you doing with this whole like van full of Craigslist stuff?
Yeah.
But the pallet flipping guy, so his business was, over the last 20 years in Birmingham, had built this network of industrial companies that either needed needed pallets or needed to get rid of pallets. And he had a bunch of other kind of industrial shipping byproducts that he dealt with too, like, 55-gallon drums and giant cardboard boxes and all sorts of stuff. But his business was essentially playing matchmaker, where this company would receive their materials or whatever in on these giant pallets, and then they would pile up because they didn't know what to do with them. And, meanwhile, a block and a half down the street is the other company that's like, well, we need that to ship our products out. And so a lot of times he would get his inventory for free, load them up into the back of a pickup truck and a flatbed, and drive it around the block, drive it across town, and cash in $3-4 a pallet, or whatever price he had set. I was like, again, another super simple one. And since we talked, I see pallets everywhere, and I'm like, pallet money, pallet money. I sent him a picture. It was in San Diego, and there was the same thing, like a flatbed loaded. They probably had 50 or 60 on there, and he texted me back and was like, "Yeah, that's probably $700 right there."
Yeah,
side hustles are everywhere.
Yeah, that's so crazy. One of the things I loved about that podcast episode too is the fact that he said, like, he went somewhere and then he found a forklift driver and he's like, "Hey, here's $10. Will you load all these?" And the guy's like, "Yeah, sure."
So he's like, "Well, it's either going to be a crazy workout and I'm going to load these 50 things out of the back of the truck myself, or hey, here's a forklift driver sitting around. I can buy him lunch."
Yeah, not bad margins on free when your product that you're selling is free.
Yeah, I was kind of excited by that. We were actually on Google Maps during the call, because he was like, "Well, here's what you do." Back in my day, we didn't have Google Maps when he started, but he's like, "What you do now is like you kind of like mouse over the industrial areas of your town, and you can kind of zoom in. And of course, the satellite picture isn't real time, but you can get an idea of like, oh, that company has a stack of pallets out back. That company has a stack of pallets out back. They are either suppliers or buyers in this potential business." And I was like, well, that's an interesting one. So you just roll up and he would ask the question, what do you guys do with those pallets? I forget how he phrased it, but it was just like kind of playing dumb, playing innocent, and asking about, figuring out, hey, are they going to be a buyer or a seller on my spreadsheet?
Yeah, I love it. That's great. I mean, it reminds you a lot of, like, in real estate too, we get a lot of people that, they'll just go out driving for doors, like looking to see if there's any deals and just kind of knocking on doors, calling people, putting up flyers. So this guy's doing the same thing, which is in the industrial parks. And, in that one particular case, flipping over $1,100 before noon. So it's a pretty good flip.
Not a bad deal at all.
Yeah. Let's go to a different type of flip. So episode number 147 of your podcast, you had on the flea market flipping guy. So tell us a little bit about that.
And this one is one of my favorites, and I actually need to do, I'd love to do a Where Are They Now episode with Rob, because he's now taken this business full time. When we recorded, it was still on the side. He was actually, I think, a real estate inspector by day, but doing the flea market flipping stuff in the evening or, nights and weekends. What his gig is buy low, sell high. It's the same business as Walmart and Amazon and, any store in the history of stores, right? What he kind of specialized in was what he called the odd items. So you can find him, he's in either Tampa or Orlando, I forget, somewhere Central Florida. And you find him at the local flea market every weekend looking for the weird stuff. And so he told me the story of finding a prosthetic leg that he picked up for $30 or $40 and flipped it on eBay the next day for $1,000. I was like, that's a good margin. That's a nice markup.
Yeah. You just hope it was legit and there wasn't some guy missing his leg, who got like roughed up in the parking lot
over here. Turn it into like a lamp from The Christmas Story or something.
There you go. Yeah.
He told me the story of finding kind of like these high-end exercise bikes from like physical therapy offices for $200 or $300 and turn them around for a couple grand. When we caught up at a conference last year, and he said he's gone bigger. Like he talked about buying like a school bus car wash or something. And I was like, where are you storing this? He's like, it's just in our side yard right now. It's like, it sounds gigantic. He's like, but it was only $100. I could definitely flip it for more than that. So he's just, he has kind of a nose for finding these deals. And he said his wife got started. He's like, she specialized like in kids and baby items. She's like, she won't spend more than $3 like per item. Whereas he wanted to make sure he could like make at least $100 spread, I think, on, I forget what he's buying. He was either sell it for more than $100 or, have $100 profit in an item.
Okay. Yeah. I knew in my previous job, I worked in an advertising agency, and one of our clients was actually a CEO of a pretty large bank. And this was his side hustle hobby, is that he was really into antique razors. So those single blade razors that you'd find, and he'd go to flea markets and he's like, you can find them for $5 and flip them for like $150 online. So that was his like passion, because he was, for whatever reason, he was really into those razors and he knew exactly what to look for. So you can probably niche it down too. That can be helpful as well.
I had a guy who just sent me a pitch a couple months ago on kind of like the storage wars side hustle, where
don't do it.
Like abandoned storage auctions.
Okay.
And he'd done like 100 of them. Yeah. And, it's an interesting little side business. He's a high school teacher.
Yeah. I'm laughing because I've done a storage wars purchase, and there's it was my two really good buddies and myself. And you go through and, I don't know if you've ever been to one, they just kind of like open the door and you can kind of look in and peek around a little bit. And then you just start, auctioning off. And my buddy got a little like drunk with power, because we told him that he could be the one that would actually give the number. And we gave him our number of what we were willing to go to. And he just started going above it. We're like, what are you doing? Dude. We bought this storage unit, and it was pretty big. I want to say it was probably 10 by 20 at least. And when you looked at the front of it, you could see like, a sewing machine, a 2-wheel cart, like kind of some things that looked like they were pretty good shape, could be sold or whatever, and all these things. But then once we actually got into it, you got over the hump and it was just trash. They had a garbage bag full of cigarette butts in there.
Why?
Yeah. Why did you pay for storage so that you could keep cigarette butts in a trash bag in here? So I spent an entire day just making no money and cleaning out a storage unit for somebody. It was a good time.
Yeah, a little bit of a treasure hunt, like all of these.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Moving on to episode number 280. So you had a gentleman on the podcast who talked about his bounce house rental business that he's doing on the side. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I love this one because this was somebody who was looking for a side hustle, working full time in IT, wanted to get involved in real estate investing, but was like, look, I don't have the capital right now. Goes to his kid's friend's birthday party, and there's like one of those inflatable bounce houses there. And he's like, well, somebody is making money off of this. Somebody's renting this house. He's like, that's kind of like real estate in a way. So he goes home, finds a used one on Craigslist for $800 or $900 and starts renting it out for $130, $140 a day. He's like, man, when you look at that compared to the 1% rule in traditional rental real estate, this is blowing it out of the water. And there's, now he's gone to the point where he's got kind of a delivery and setup guy. He's got another virtual assistant who's kind of answering the phones and taking bookings. So it's really kind of a way, he's found a way to turn this pretty passive. He'd found a guy to deliver the bounce house to the customer and then set it up, take it down at the end of the day, and also to have a virtual assistant who's answering the phones and kind of coordinating the bookings. So, was able to minimize his time investment. And I thought he had a pretty smart setup.
I thought I kind of looked at the show notes on this particular episode. One of the things I really like about Nick's podcast is that you can go in and just get a PDF download too of the podcast. So if you like to read rather than listen in your car or whatever you do, you can do that. And on the show notes, you kind of talked about how his virtual assistant was helping him because they were booking these things and he had somebody that could actually respond to these sales leads very quickly. So the sales kind of weren't dying for him, which I thought was really clever too.
Yeah, he mentioned the platform Thumbtack for getting a lot of his customers. And it's a platform that really relies on speed of response. So if you're sitting there, working your day job from 9 to 5, that could be a little bit tricky. And so that's where he found some success in kind of processing those replies and then having somebody else do that while he was at work.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move to the final episode that we're going to highlight here. This is episode number 182. So when I first read this title, Digital Real Estate Investing, I was thinking, all right, this is somebody who sells courses on real estate investing. And it was actually very different. You had on a gentleman by the name of Ace on your podcast for number 182. Can you tell us a little bit about that conversation?
Yeah. So Ace is I don't want to call him like a business broker, but he's he's like a mogul. He's done like 30 or 40 different businesses and really specializes in online businesses, e-commerce businesses, content-based blog businesses, affiliate businesses, and the reason that is attractive to him is because the multiples are very, very strong, right? You could buy an online business at 2, 3, 4 times annual earnings versus you could buy, Procter & Gamble stock for 20 years annual earnings or something, compared to the PE ratios in the stock market or even traditional, rental or real estate investments. Just blows it out of the water. And of course, there's more risk. There's more time management involved in upkeep for these businesses, but the returns are there. And ACE kind of specialize in putting management or putting a team in place to maintain those businesses and also to grow them. So he had a couple examples where he, bought it for this price and then made a few tweaks. And then several months later, it was earning more per month. So he was able to turn around and sell it for kind of a fix and flip situation.
Yeah. So, I mean, in some ways, he's a lot like a real estate investor, but he's just doing it digitally online. So he sees something where he's like, you know what, like a real estate investor might look at a property and say, I think I can put $20,000 of rehab into that and flip it and sell it for more. Where this guy's looking at a property, but it's online and buying a business and saying, I think the one example you had mentioned in your show notes was that somebody had a website and 60% of their traffic was coming from mobile. And the website wasn't even mobile optimized. So he's like, you know what, we can buy this, we can optimize it for mobile and start, converting on this traffic better. And then just like that, he had a way more profitable business than what he bought it for.
Yeah, looking at the inefficiencies in the market and looking for, properties that are already cash flowing, right? The same thing. It's like, hey, there's already tenants in place. Hey, there's already traffic coming to this website. People are already clicking on the ads. People are already buying the products. And, with a little bit of upkeep, maybe I have a virtual assistant, or maybe I have a team member who, likes writing about whatever topic that it is. And I can keep that going and, potentially break even in 2 or 3 years. And everything after that is gravy. It's kind of an exciting frontier to think about of, okay, how can I multiply money?
Yeah. And I think one of the most interesting parts, at least to me, is that he's buying these businesses and he's not having to hire 10 employees, or he doesn't have to worry about a roof over the business because it's all existing online. So there's a lot of the maintenance stuff that gets pulled out of a typical business that you're not dealing with, but you just have to kind of know what you're doing as far as how to optimize that business and know the numbers and how everything works. But like most of your podcast episodes, you can just go to the podcast and there's also show notes and there's all sorts of resources that you can check out to learn more about each individual podcast and what that guest is offering, right? Yeah,
what Ace left me with that has really stuck with me was the little soundbite of, when I need money, I go buy it. And he was giving the example of, talking to his mentor, and he's like, I need a new computer. And the mentor was like, why don't you just build it? I mean, you could build that from scratch if you wanted to. He's like, are you kidding me? I don't know how to build a computer. It's like, well, why are you trying to build income from scratch? Go buy it, dummy. So it's like, when I need money, I go buy it. That's kind of shifted my mentality on some investing stuff. And, why try and build something from scratch? Why try and reinvent the wheel? Mm-hmm. And, some cash flows are already out there.
Yeah, I think it's more romantic to like reinvent the wheel and think that you're like the first person to ever do something. But even when you're done, you probably weren't the first person to do it unless you're Elon Musk.
Right.
So it's like somebody out there has already done it before, see how they did it, and then try and do it just as well. So Nick, if people want to check out your website, they can go to sidehustlenation.com. You got the podcast, and then you also have some other resources on your site as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Sidehustlenation.com is the home base. If you hit sidehustlenation.com/ideas, kind of a constantly updated laundry list of part-time business ideas. If you're thinking, hey, I got to diversify out of the real estate stuff, although there's a handful of different flavors of real estate investing that we've talked about, both this digital variety and online, including, wholesaling and raw land. And we've got an episode coming up with a kind of creative financing specialist. So we dabble in the real estate world as well.
Cool. Very cool. Well, thank you for your time. We appreciate your insights. And it's so interesting getting so many insights from you because of all the people that you've met over the years just from doing your podcast. So that's really cool to kind of tap into those insights.
Yeah, I get excited every week. There's always new ideas coming down the road.
Yeah. All right. I love it. All right, Nick, thanks again. And hopefully we'll keep up with you and people can check out your podcast. And maybe someday down the line, we'll catch up with you again and have you on for another video series.
All right. Sounds good. We'll talk to you soon.